If you ask me, I think this question reeks of fragile heterosexuality.
Papa is back.
Unfortunately, in today's society, people are still so scared of being gay that they have to seek assurance for their heterosexuality. Even though this question in and of itself is problematic, I'll go ahead and answer it for you all. No, you are not gay if you are a straight man who likes trans women. You'll always find a voice on LGBT issues on this channel, sometimes an unconventional one. Stay tuned to see what I have to say, and subscribe if I pique your interest. So I think a great way to start this video will be to talk about the issue of sexual orientation and how the narrow definition most people have of it is the reason why this question is asked in the first place. I think it's because of the narrow definition of sexual orientation that people think that a man who dates a trans woman is possibly gay. This narrow definition of sexual orientation pretty much assumes that it is the genitalia that ultimately determines what sexual orientation a person is. The logic goes, if you like genitalia of members of the opposite sex, you're straight. If you like the genitalia of members of the same sex, you're gay. Or lesbian, women exist too. But this narrow definition leads me to ask the following question. If genitalia is all that matter in determining one's sexual orientation, then why do people care so much about gender conformity? Why are there some people who want their partners to be masculine or feminine in spite of them having the genitalia that quote unquote would determine their sexual orientation to begin with? What does that matter? That's actually a great point to make. In some cases, gender conformity is the ultimate determining factor in determining one's attraction to somebody else. I'm very sure that the average straight man would want his woman to be on the feminine side in spite of her having a vagina, what he's naturally attracted to, just as a woman would prefer her man to be more on the masculine side in spite of the fact that he already has the genitalia that she would be attracted to. So with this being the case, I don't think it's fair to assume that it is only genitalia that determines one's sexual orientation or attraction to somebody else. We have to understand that gender is definitely a determining factor in somebody's attraction to somebody else, in conjunction with the genitalia. Me, for an instance, as a gay man, I find myself attracted mostly to individuals who are more masculine presenting overall. The typical features of a man is what attracts me, as well as some elements that are concordant with the idea of masculinity. This is not to say that I'm not attracted to men who may come off as feminine, but if a man is extremely feminine to the point of some possibly seeing him as more woman-like, I personally may not find that man as attractive. In spite of him being a man, the fact that he is mostly feminine presenting and seems to come off as a woman, or seems to give the impression that he wants to be a woman, is what ultimately would not allow for me to be fully attracted to that particular male individual. So at least for me, gender does play a part in my attraction to another man. I can imagine that for straight men, the same holds. The more woman-like a particular individual seems to come off, the higher the probability that that particular straight male may find that individual attractive because of the appearance of being a woman. And I personally think that if a straight man most of the time finds himself attracted to woman-like features or to people who come off as more woman-like, is indicative of heterosexuality and not homosexuality. So once again, I reiterate, I do not think it is solely the genitalia that determines attraction to somebody else. I think most people want their partners to also act the part. So just because a woman has a vagina does not mean she'll act womanly, and just because a man has a penis does not mean he'll act masculine. And in some instances, this gender non-conformity may be off-putting to particular individuals. So once again, genitalia is not the only factor that we need to consider when determining somebody's sexual orientation. Another thing that I think people just assume does not exist is a person's sexual history. I'm going to run through a few assumptions I have about straight men real quick, just to see what you all think about them. I can imagine that the average straight man probably has only pursued human beings that he perceived to be women, right? I can also assume that the average straight man probably has only dated and courted women and has never had any interest in being with another man sexually or romantically, right? And I'm going to assume that the average straight male probably has only had sexual relations with women. So already right there, we have a pattern established. Straight men typically go for women or human beings who come off as women-like. So in my personal opinion, I do not think it's accurate to say that just because a straight man finds himself attracted to a trans woman automatically means that he is gay, when his sexual history proves otherwise. And we have to also remember, trans women identify as women, want to be perceived as women, and in most instances do everything in their power to try to make sure that people perceive them as women. I think this supports the point that I made just a few minutes ago, that in spite of genitalia, a person can still find themselves attracted to a person who comes off as woman-like, or who seems to have more feminine elements to their overall being. What about trans women who haven't had the surgery? Wouldn't that make a straight man gay if he still likes that trans woman, if he finds out that she still has a penis? Well, we're all adults here, so I guess we should have that conversation, why don't we? I just want to aforemention that everything I'm about to say are assumptions, and of course, you are more than welcome to correct me, but most of my assumptions are based off of educated guesses. So let's get right to it. When it comes to sex, I can imagine that straight men, on average, only partake in certain sexual behaviors. Ultimately, straight men assumes the penetrative role in sex, meaning he's the only one doing the penetration and is not being penetrated. If a straight man only assumes the penetrative role in sex, I would assume that this would not necessarily change just because he's with a trans woman. Nor do I think a transgender woman who has not had gender affirmation surgery necessarily going to want to assume the penetrative role. In addition to this, I'm also very sure that the average straight man would not want to have anything to do with the particular part of a trans woman's body to begin with, nor do I think a trans woman would want another person stimulating that part of her body, and I'm very sure that she doesn't even want it there to begin with. So just because some trans women have not had their sex reassignment surgery, it does not mean that they want their body to be treated as if it were that of a man's. A trans woman wants her body to be treated as if it were actually the body of a woman. Just because she may not have had certain surgeries to look the part does not mean she wants her body to be treated in accordance with the gender that was assigned to her at birth. Now, granted, I understand that there's some people who will not listen to my argument, period, because they do not think trans women in general are real women, and they will always speak about them in a pejorative manner. And we live in a free country, so everybody can believe what they believe. Whether or not you believe trans women are real women, it cannot be denied that straight men who are attracted to trans women are not attracted to them because of the gender assigned to them at birth. Straight men who are attracted to trans women like them because they come off as women, because they present as women, not because they present as men, not because they still have parts of the male anatomy, but because they present as women and are living their lives as women and as the gender that they feel to be on the inside. So whether or not you want to sit here and believe that it's all make-believe and it's all pretend, I still think that we have to understand that this pretending still is indicative of some kind of heterosexuality in that straight man if he's treating that human being as a woman. I am pretty sure that for as long as any straight man is involved with a trans woman, he will not at any point want that trans woman to act any way like a man, nor will he treat her as a man. And in my opinion, I think that because of all of this once again proves heterosexuality in spite of some transgender women not having received bottom surgery. The definition of homosexuality is to want to be with somebody of the same sex. And it can also be assumed that in wanting to be with somebody of the same sex, you may want that person to retain most of their natal sexual characteristics. Gay men would probably want their partners to maintain the majority of their masculine elements and to come off more as men, and lesbians will probably want their partners to come off more as women to retain the majority of their feminine elements. As I said before, straight men are not into trans women because of whatever masculine elements may remain of her being. A straight man likes a trans woman because of the feminine elements that she has, and because a trans woman is coming off as a woman. So in spite of some trans women not having had their gender affirmation surgery, I do not think a straight man who all of a sudden dates trans women is gay. In my opinion, those men are still heterosexual. If you still don't believe that straight men who date trans women are straight or 100% straight, then I would rather you give them the term trans-amorous. But if a straight man has never had any attraction to a person who looks like me or to a human being who is ultimately masculine, then no, in my opinion, you're not gay. You're not homosexual. No. Sorry. As always, I would love to hear your comments on this. What do you think? Are straight men who date trans women gay? Do you think they're closeted? Do you think they're bi? What do you think? Let me know. And of course, as always, subscribe to my channel. Definitely helps me out. Definitely encourages me to make more content. And you'll always be able to find a voice on LGBT political issues right here on this channel. Hope to see you around soon.